Hi, my name is Jill. You are here at Road Culture Rules, and today I'm just kind of doing a check-in because this is one of the realities of living in a tiny space in bad weather and what happens. It's basically been 3 days of living in the dark in like a cave. And I know you guys might like to go into your cave. It makes me freaking crazy. So we're going to just talk a little bit about the realities of the dark side of living in tiny spaces, and also just kind of a check-in. So with that, we're going to take a deep breath, hold for 4, exhale, and see you on the other side. You know what's outside, Frida? Are you excited? Are you ready? What's outside? What's outside? What's outside? What's outside? It's snow! Are you excited? It's snow! Morning! Most of it melted. But yay! We got snow! So, me and Freedom are pretty much bored out of our minds. Also struggling a little bit. It's been, which we got some snow, which you just saw in the little cutout in the video, and how, which is really good. We didn't get enough, and it's already evaporated. So hopefully some of it will sink into the ground because the cows are hungry. They need them some grass. So we need it, but it's been 3 days of living in a dark cave, and that is one of the downsides of being in a very tiny space. And I think I've probably talked about this before, but you know, I have 80 million things going on in my head that I'd like to share, and I don't know how to even do that in this one tiny little space. So I need to sort all that stuff out. There's actually one of the things that happens for me, I don't know about you, you know, I can tell you from a mental health perspective that one of the things that happens, you've heard of SAD, right? Seasonal affective disorder. When you don't get enough light in through your eyes into your pineal gland, it doesn't turn off your melatonin and turn on your serotonin, which is one of the reasons why I like to walk first thing in the morning, is it makes that switch. So when you're kind of in half light or darkness, as it's been for the last 3 days, because I have to keep, the windows are open now, but because it's cold and snowy out, I have to keep all the windows closed up, so there's just very little light inside, is that the melatonin doesn't ever fully exit your brain, so you're kind of in that sleepy, foggy place, which is why people who work night shift tend to have a lot more problems, because their brain, the switching on and off, the serotonin turning on during the day and the melatonin turning on at night, that gets all goofed up because artificial light doesn't accomplish that. It has to be natural sunlight or one of those special kind of lights, which I used to have, which burned out, which I don't have anymore. So anyways, so your brain is kind of foggy, your body's kind of lethargic, and you put on top of that a ridiculously tiny space where there's nowhere to move around, and it makes for a very long few days. So there's just some practical things I just wanted to toss out there. I still go out every couple hours, no matter what the weather is, because number one, I can't stand it, and two, the dog needs to get out. So it's not that we don't get outside, but it's very labor intensive in terms of getting all dressed. Dressing down, there's mud everywhere, but things are drying out, so I figure, what the heck, we won't toss the mud out till it's a little bit drier outside. So it's a little bit more difficult. You know, I would tell you that a way to problem solve that is to definitely plan ahead, but one of the big things that I find myself doing is either I get very contemplative and I go into my head and I'm thinking about a lot of stuff, or a lot of times I just do big old long movie marathons or video marathons, because sometimes it's not good to go too long into your head and think about too much. So there's just some realities for those of you who haven't had the fabulous experience of being in a small space when the weather goes bad. It's harder than normal. So, you know, when you're in a house, you've got a lot more room to move around in, and you can get in your car and go places when your house is your car. You know, for those of you who have RVs, it makes it more complicated. And when you live like me out in the middle of nowhere, there's nowhere to go. If I can even get off my driveway, which I wouldn't want to take that chance just to go into town because there's nothing going on in town. So it's just something to factor in and consider if you're not somebody that does well with small spaces and a lot of downtime, then this can be very difficult for you. I don't know how people did it before the computer because you know, cell phones and computers make it infinitely easier to reach out to the outside world. But there's some physical stuff, you know, going on. There's lack of oxygen if you're in a small space and, you know, you're all closed up and you've got some kind of heat going on. You know, there's the darkness factor I just talked about. There's not moving as much. The less you move, the more sluggish you get. You know, everything slows down. So you have to be pretty intentional about being aware of that. You know, when it's just a day or two, it's not a big deal. But when it's, you know, I've gotten snowed in for 3 weeks at a time, and that makes for a very long chunk of time. And, you know, because I'm in the Southwest, which is intentional, is that, you know, we have so many more Sundays compared to so much of the rest of the country or the world. So it's just something to factor in if you are in a little tiny space and you're discovering the fabulousness of being in a small space, or if you're thinking about it, how it really doesn't matter if you're a man or woman in this context. It's just hard. And you do better to get outside regardless, which is one of the things that I'm really glad I have the dog that will get me outside, because I don't know how motivated I would be if I was left to my own devices. So that's just me kind of checking in. The big score for the weekend, though, we will show you this picture here. This is my sourdough bread. It is the first time it's actually risen like that. I made it with more flour. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful bread. Yummy sourdough. I made the best loaf of sourdough bread I've made so far. So super happy. I've got the right amount of kneading and the right amount of however the sourdough mix is working out good right now. I had to start it over. And so that was my big score this weekend. Was I made a kick-ass loaf of sourdough bread. And also, you know, there's some pretty heavy stuff thinking about, so just be prepared. Some of those thoughts may be coming forth. But it is Monday. I didn't do a video this weekend, so I wanted to check in, say hello, give you some thoughts, something else to think about on a very practical level, because, you know, push comes to shove, it's still all about 24 hours at a time, getting up, making your way, going to bed, doing it all over again the next day. So regardless of our opinions, beliefs, politics, thoughts, ideas, it's still a 24-hour day that requires some very practical biological effort. And that is a reality. When it's dark and you're in a tiny space, it's harder for you. At least it is for me. At least it is for a lot of people. So at least just recognizing that is helpful. So I hope this helps. And with that, I think we're going to wind it down. So we're going to take one more deep breath for the road as together we're walking with the sun in our eyes whenever it feels like coming out again. I think tomorrow. Love in our hearts, which is easier when the sun is in our eyes. And feet on the ground, which is easier when the sun is in our eyes. So together walking, survival road, one step at a time. Live free and die wild, even if you're in a tiny dark space. And we will see you next time.
1,000 miles or more, you can't see what you're chasing.